Sure. Go ahead, please.
Well, you touched on the spirituality of the connection that you made earlier in life with the Beach Boys.
Yes.
Do you think that, Nick, maybe that played into Darian falling into the role that he did during that process?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of have a common link between him and Brian with that spirituality, that Brian can feel that essence?
I think when you feel things like that, you increase, quote unquote, your chances for luck, to be in the right place at the right time. Obviously, a lot of it's political, luck, it's social skills. And obviously, you got to have some talent to get involved in that, because you could wish a lot of things, but the physics involved is, it's going to prevent you from actually carrying it through. But I think to fully realize something like SMiLE, I think, Darian had to be, without using a California cliche, he had to be on the wavelength. And to be on the wavelength, I think, is to understand the music deeply beyond just snippets on the bootlegs or what you've read about it. It's just it has to move you a certain way that you can't put into words. And that the only way you could express it is to, get the opportunity to work with the guy who invented it, and then coax things out of him that perhaps never was even asked in an interview, because people wouldn't know what questions to ask, because they're not really working in the musical realm. So I think that's the spirituality. And obviously, it's no surprise that it was just such a mundane thing for him to ask Melinda, and then Melinda saying something to him, and then Darian mentioned something else, and then also that phone call, which led to another level. And that I think that allowed the project to actually assume the kind of status that it did, obviously. Not just because it was this great undone album, the way Rolling Stone magazine does it, or all the people that give it the 4 or 5 star reviews. I think it's because it's really, too, in a strange way, coming at the right time. Even though it's way too late. I mean, it could have came out, maybe we could have done this before Pet Sounds in some weird way. Like, if that's, let's just say if Darian's agenda as being the guy who translated all this stuff, or took notes and made things happen, was the go-between guy, that I think if the agenda was just to be a SMiLE spaz, so to speak, and really just be into that aspect, because there are people like that. They'll concentrate on 1 or 2 periods, and they'll get mad if you tell them, oh, you like the early stuff or the later guys, or just guys that like the latter portion of someone's career. If you mention the early stuff, nah, that's inferior. But if you just love the music, you don't look at it as a hierarchy. You see it almost as a horizontal thing, like a brotherhood. So obviously it was a natural progression to get to this. There was nothing artificial. There's no hidden agendas, because I think with SMiLE there was always that prevented it from happening. There was all the people, we know the stories. We don't have to bring up Brian's dad or Mike Love and all that, because in their own way, I mean, they were kind of protecting themselves too. You can't blame, a mature person can look at it and say, you can't blame them for feeling the way they did, that they inadvertently screwed the whole thing up. But I don't think they wanted to screw it up if they felt maybe they could profit by it. But I think they were protecting their own ground in what they perceived as like, well, here's Van Dyke, and I don't like this because now he's going to have a new guy here, and blah, blah, blah. But, that's not even important anymore. I think if you concentrate just on the music, you'll always win. And I think that's what he did. That's why we got what we got. But, everyone played an important role. And I don't think anyone's like totally the villain or totally the hero in this thing. I think it's a testament to how great the music was, of where it came from. As Brian always says, as corny as it sounds, he claims, it came from a higher source. Maybe it did. I don't know. He doesn't know. I mean, and obviously we were all kind of, I guess, manipulated by some other dimensional thing, I know it sounds highfalutin, but it happened in such a way that it couldn't be predicted. We could have, like I said, there could have been this little part in him that always wanted to do SMiLE. I mean, there is, but I mean, from the beginning, like once you're in the Brian Wilson band, it's like, dude, we just got to hammer that SMiLE thing into Brian.
And then, my God.
But know what happens? Then you're fired, because it's like, oh, these guys, they don't care about the music. They just care about, in a weird way, all they care about is getting their name attached to something. And that's what will make you fail. But if you say, look, that doesn't matter to me.
I remember when the announcement came down that we were going to do SMiLE. I didn't want to do it. It was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
it's like,
I remember.
No, we're going to completely.
That's true.
We're going to completely,
ruin. Well, the mystery.
Shatter the
mystique.
The mystique of it all. It's like, oh, because it represented a certain thing that was, of a certain time like a holy grail of sorts.
Don't touch it.
Yeah, exactly.
And really, if it's just we, when he means we, I mean the collective, the Brian Wilson group, which obviously that's why we had to add the strings and horns. I mean, there had to be other people involved, because there's no way to do that material. I mean, there were some approaches that were bandied about, but I think they were rejected.
I mean, I doubted the whole thing until what really got me going was the personal interaction of Brian. And Van Dyke, and it was about those guys. Then that made me feel like, well, this is for real now. This is not that mysterious thing that we're gonna possibly ruin by updating it or whatever. I was like, these guys are just picking up where they left off.
Darian the midwife. Well, no, really, because when it really, I think, was born was the minute Van Dyke was curious about that phone call that he got. Because, come on, that must have blown him away. I mean, imagine, like, if I hadn't seen you in 37 years or whatever, situation like that. It's like, so do you remember that one, it is kind of absurd. It's purely absurd to just go, between this and this word, what do you remember? And you're like thinking, what? I mean, you know what I mean?
But that's the beauty here, too, is that Van Dyke, and him and I had long discussions. Yeah, there's a certain serendipitous thing in that Van Dyke, I think he appreciates the same things about Brian that I do. I don't know how it is, but we share notes a lot in that way, and we end up laughing at the very same mannerisms that Brian has, qualities. And I think that's what it's, I think the funny thing is, Nick was saying earlier about how some people, they're very territorial about, what phase of Brian Wilson is the best.
There are a lot of those guys.
I think, like someone like Van Dyke, I share with him the love of Brian Wilson, the complete artist, like
from the beginning.
From surfing to our car club. I mean, all that stuff is relevant because it's what makes. I mean, Pet Sounds is great, unto itself, but to me, they're even great. That album that music is even greater because it's coming from the same guy who did, in the parking lot. That's what makes it great. Or I'm bugged at my old man. Or the same guy who wrote.
You're not seeing it as a hierarchy. You're not seeing this is precious, so we must treat this as great. The early stuff is amazing, considering how amazing it is that it's a rock and roll band playing it too.
Yeah.
The later stuff he started using, including other people.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it's all. That's what makes Brian Wilson. So many people just go. Yeah. They think of Brian as the guy behind Pet Sounds or the guy who just, or the Beach Boys, woo, that kind of stuff. But
that's all he gets.
I think of Brian as this, he's kind of a Hawthorne hick. He's like a simple guy from Hawthorne who gets off on very traditional, kind of corny things. Has very traditional values, but he just happens to have a kind of a quirky sense of humor and a quirky kind of view of life. I mean, he kind of sees things on a completely different plane,
Yeah.
And gosh, that's what I love about him. And I think when it's almost like I want to encourage that side of him,
right?
Which is maybe that's what he feels from me too, is that he doesn't have to try to be something different.
Right.
He can just be kind of corny old Brian. And and he's comfortable with that. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know.
Well, how's it feel for you, having been a guy in the '70s who kind of was lured by "I Get Around" to all these years later, I don't think it's gone beyond anyone's notice that you've given something back significantly to Brian, and whether or not you're aware of that, you really have. Well, and I don't think Nick would disagree with that.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't think of a better guy for the job than Darian. Not because I know him, but because when I met him, I'm just thinking, oh, this guy could easily work on this stuff. Easily.
I guess so. I mean, well, it makes me feel great to answer your question. Like, because it is about, when I think about all the hours and hours of joy and, just spiritual uplifting or transcending myself to a nicer place or different place that Brian's music's done for me. It is kind of like you wish you can pay the guy back, like give him something back, and I suppose I have. I never really thought of it that way, but it's nice to know that that he knows that I love his music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think he knows that about the entire
Yeah.
band.
Yeah.
That's what's great.
Yeah.
That's when I knew we were doing something right, is when I knew that he is really comfortable, that he can really feel. I mean, the best, I guess the best sign that all of this is a good thing is that he's still doing it, and that he likes to do it.
Yeah.
That means we must be doing something right.
Yeah.
And you know, Brian being such a purely musical guy means that, I mean, I've seen him when he's not into what's going on. He tends to sort of sabotage things, or he'll just like not, you know, just like make it really difficult for him to get him involved in something. But when he's into something, it's really easy. You know, he just gets into it. He'll sing, you know, he'll sing out, and he'll want to hear the band, and he'll be really comfortable around everybody, and he doesn't have to worry. You know, I mean, unfortunately, he's had a lot of trouble in his life, and I don't think it'll ever be a situation where things will be, you know, perfect for Brian Wilson. But I think that in his world, this is the least of all evils. You know what I mean? He's got a group around him that I really do think that he feels that we love his music, and we love him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. As a person.
Gosh,
Even if he wasn't making the music, I think I'd still think that guy's a great guy too.
Oh my God!
To follow as an example, because he just never badmouths anyone. And he just tends to just say, that's how he always was, or whatever. If you want to, you know, mention someone who did something wrong to him in the past, and there's a lot of people that again end up being the heroes and villains. He'll just go, yeah. And even the people that you think you're going to champion, he's like, he wasn't that good, you know, whatever. But so he kind of balances things out. He really is a down-to-earth guy in that way. Well, you know, he's
very honest.
Yeah.
He's very honest. He can't. It's very difficult for him to lie.
Yeah.
You know, if he lies, it'd be like a child, so you can see right through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's not really lying because
he's
being for real.
2 or 3 times, and then he'll go, okay, yeah, you're right, I'm lying. Like if you ask him,
Yeah,
are you sure? You sure? He's like,
nah, okay, I'm just joking. I was just joking.
So you just call him on his crap, and then he'll always admit to it. And in that way, I think he doesn't have to be. I mean, he's pretty, just, I don't know, $3 word here, but magnanimous. He's really neat in sharing his thoughts, his soul with us. You know, he doesn't have to. He could just live in his ivory cat, and he deserves to. He can live wherever he wants and do what he wants. He doesn't need us, but he always chooses to have fun with us, and you know, he likes to be close too to people. He's really kind of people like to think of him as, you know, whatever, not a social being, but he's very social. When he just feels like he's appreciated.